Recording. Great. All right, welcome again. I'm so happy to be able to welcome everybody tonight. My name is Jenny Abel, and I am the chair of the Great Waters Group of the Sierra Club. And we are so happy to have everyone joining us tonight. We have a fabulous program to share with you tonight. Al Gedicks, an Indigenous rights activist, will outline the strategies and coalitions that have led to notable victories against mining companies that threaten Wisconsin's waters. First, we're grateful to have journalist Isiah Holmes, the recipient of the 2021 Environmental Hero of the Year Award, with us this evening. We typically present this award during our December holiday party, so that's why it's our 2021 award, but we didn't hold a holiday party this year due to the pandemic, and so instead we decided to present this award during our January program. Isiah's work is commendable on many levels, and notably, WUWM broadcast an interview with him earlier today. A staff writer for the Wisconsin Examiner, his reporting has covered a wide spectrum of environmental and social justice issues, including the epic campaign that put the construction of Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline 4 years behind schedule. Isiah has also reported on threats to our fundamental democratic rights. His reporting on local Black Lives Matter marches and his relentless investigation of the highly questionable electronic surveillance of protesters by the Wauwatosa and Milwaukee police is both groundbreaking and courageous. Isiah Holmes is on the case, and we all benefit from it. Isiah, I'd like to turn it over to you if you would like to share any remarks.
Hi, can everyone hear me? You guys can? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, great. So, thanks. So, well, I'm really honored to, receive this award. It's definitely an honor. It's definitely one of the, kind of a first for me. And it's such a nice little frame. If I could show it right here, I don't know if anyone can see it, but it's really pretty. I like it. The policing stuff aside, I do really love reporting and working on stories about the environment and ecology, whether it has to do with things impacting urban communities or rural communities in Wisconsin, and sometimes it stretches out in kind of I guess unexpected ways, right? Because one thing that one of the speakers mentioned was, something I wrote about Enbridge, and that is environmental, but I almost don't think of it as something as like what pops in my mind is, the recent oil spill in the Menominee River, or which occurred in the West Milwaukee area, or the danger to wetlands and stuff. Whereas the Enbridge thing was, in my mind, it was more so about the struggle that Indigenous people and other people are having in states right around us right now. I also wanted to just touch on just kind of like how my love for the environment really stretches back to when I was a kid. I had a lot of animals growing up. I always loved reptiles and amphibians and things like that. I actually wanted to be a herpetologist when I was a kid, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians. It's a kind of zoology. And I just decided to go into journalism like senior year of high school. I just thought that it was a better practical fit for me. As a kid, I loved going out in nature, catching frogs and snakes, and the crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin, was like a big inspiration for me. And I was heartbroken when he died. I actually remember walking into elementary school that day when that happened. The environment is something really, really special, in nature and the woods are, and it's in a lot of ways it's the closest thing to a church really that I've ever will probably accept into my life personally. And it is, I would like people to kind of pay more attention to the environment and kind of the things going on around them and the new patterns, new weather patterns, and stop thinking of the environment as just this kind of thing that just exists in the vacuum, that you can just kind of do whatever you want to and it'll just stay there perfect and you can just exploit it. It's very sensitive and there's balances in place, and that's not always true. And another big environmental issue, obviously, is the climate change. It's something that I know a lot of people, particularly, especially, but not just in my generation and people younger than me, are really concerned about. But it seems like sometimes people don't really seem to grasp it, even here, even as certain things are occurring around the country. Destructive weather patterns and stuff, because it's not occurring here, it doesn't really hit home for a lot of people. So I hope that through my work I'm able to open up some people's eyes and provide them with good information, while also enriching that part of myself and my spirit that requires being in nature. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you so much, Isiah. And just another quick reminder to folks to please mute yourselves so that we don't get your background noise. Thanks. Yeah, so thank you again, Isiah, for all that you do to share the Earth story and the stories of its defenders. Before I pass it over to Eric Hansen, who will be introducing tonight's speaker, I want to celebrate the fact that we're all joining together today on the day when we observe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And in the Great Waters Group, one of our priorities for 2022 is to ensure that the majority of our activities focus on building a multicultural environmental movement and advancing environmental justice. I also want to let you know about some upcoming programs that we're going to be having. We'll announce these again at the end of tonight's program, but we do programs every month from September through May on the third Monday of the month. And so in February, on February 21st, we're going to have the third annual African American Environmental Pioneers Awards ceremony. That will be on February 21st at 6:30. And our March program, also on March 21st, the third Monday, will focus on a wealth of nature in the metro area, when photographer Eddie Daniel will be sharing his photos of Milwaukee's rivers and other natural areas. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Eric Hansen, who is going to be introducing tonight's speaker. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. Dr. Al Gedicks is an environmental sociologist and indigenous rights activist and scholar. He has written extensively about indigenous and popular resistance to ecologically destructive mining and oil projects. In 1977, he founded the Center for Alternative Mining Development Policy and assisted the Mole Lake Ojibwe tribe in successfully resisting Exxon's proposed metallic sulfide mine upstream from the tribe's sacred wild rice beds. His documentary film about the Crandon mine battle, Keepers of the Water, won the Best Environmental Film Award at the Red Earth American Indian Film Festival in Oklahoma City in 1997. From 1995 to 1998, he worked with the Wolf Watershed Educational Project to mobilize public support for Wisconsin's landmark Prove It First Mining Moratorium Law. He is Emeritus Professor of Sociology at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and the Executive Secretary of the Wisconsin Resources Protection Council, a statewide environmental organization to educate the public about metallic sulfide mining projects in the upper Midwest. He is presently working with the Menominee Nation and the Coalition to Save the Menominee River to oppose the Back 40 project next to the Menominee River. I have known him for near 20 years. He knows exactly how grassroots multiracial coalitions win, and I urge you to give his comments thorough consideration. Al, over to you.
Thank you, Eric. Can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. I come to you from the traditional territory of the Ho-Chunk, also known as the Winnebago, who were one of the first native populations that were removed and systematically violently assaulted by the people that settled Wisconsin and the military that forcibly removed the Ho-Chunk from the lead and zinc mining district in southwest Wisconsin, culminating in the Battle of Bad Axe, which was actually a massacre of the Ho-Chunk tribe as they tried to escape the violence of the military who were pursuing them across the Iowa border. So the entire history of the state of Wisconsin was premised upon the expulsion of the native populations from the mineral-rich areas of the state, extending eventually into Ojibwe or Anishinaabe territory, which is the subject that I will be discussing tonight. But I think that when the elected representatives of the state of Wisconsin, like Governor Walker, celebrate the miner as one of the founding fathers of the state of Wisconsin, it's important to put this statue of the miner in the context of the theft of Indian lands and the forcible removal of native peoples, which continue to the present day in terms of the assault on native treaty rights. So let me share the screen and begin the presentation. I'm having trouble locating my my PowerPoint.
Did you click on the green button at the bottom that says share screen?
Yes.
Okay. And then one of the thumbnails that popped up should be, if you have your PowerPoint open, it should be that. That should be one of the thumbnails that popped up.
Okay. Do you see the PowerPoint?
No, we're not seeing it.
We'll let you know, Al, as soon as it shows up.
I seem to have lost the share screen button on the on my screen.
Try again now.
Sometimes if you move your cursor over your screen, you'll see where it is. It just slips up sometimes.
Has the
Yeah.
host given you share screen privileges, Al?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have.
Al's co-host, but I had a dialog box open that may have prevented it momentarily.
And Al, if you'd like to email it to me, if you're not able to share it, I could share
Okay,
it for you.
all right, I will do that. And what is your email?
So I'm the one who you were corresponding with earlier this, well, here, I'll enter it in the chat.
I don't see it in the chat.
Yeah, I just sent it to everyone, but I can tell it to you. It's JABEL
JABEL
209
209.
@gmail.com.
Okay,
Maybe Jenny can do something.
I think it's really embarrassing for Al.
Well, it's stressful. I'd be stressed. I'd remind everyone that we hear what you say. You should mute yourself.
Yeah, and Karen gave us a great prompt while we're waiting. She put the link in the chat for where to sign up for the African American Environmental Pioneers Awards ceremony that'll be taking place on February 21st. We would love to see everyone at that. That'll be the 3rd annual awards ceremony. And like we said, in March, the focus will be on a program from photographer Eddie Daniel, who will be sharing lots of his award-winning photos of Milwaukee's natural areas.
Jenny, it almost looks like Al got logged out. And so let's keep an eye out for the waiting room in case he's coming back in. But also, I thought I would, is it okay if I just say a couple of things about the February program?
Absolutely.
For those who haven't seen it in previous years, 2 years ago, we started a project to honor folks in the African American community who had contributed to the environment and the environmental movement. And there's some various obvious names there. For example, Venus Williams from Alice's Garden and Will Allen from Growing Power. And the list goes on. You can find articles about it on the Great Waters Group website. But we haven't been able to release the names yet this year. We have a very small committee that's working on it. There's been some illnesses and death in the family that's kind of slowed us down, but we're working to get the list finalized and get everybody's permissions and information correct. And we're going to be honoring 12 African-American pioneers in the environmental movement. Well, actually 6, and then we've also created a category called Rising Stars, and in order to make the ceremony intergenerational, we try and recognize young folks who are getting a start back in the environmental movement. So that's coming up in February, and you can find both articles and a link to register for the program on the Great Waters Group website. In 2020, we opened the program, the award ceremony, with the Kothi African Dance Company, and it was a very moving program with some spoken word artists and a hip hop music video. And then in 2021, we had a featured speaker was David Nelson, who was one of the original group that called themselves the Last Poets, that included artists like Gil Scott-Heron, who formed a group in Harlem that is seen by many as the roots in the beginning of the hip hop and rap music genre. He actually created some poetry for the event, and it's all recorded and available on our Facebook page. Anybody else want to make some comments while we wait for Al to come back? Oh, I see he's in the waiting room, and I don't know how long he's been waiting, but as soon as I can. You're back with us, Al.
Okay, Jenny, did you get the PowerPoint?
I did. I'm bringing it up right now.
Okay.
I'm getting off, Al.
All right.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
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 Okay, terrific. So Al, just let me know when you want me to advance the slides. And thanks everyone for your patience.
Okay, sorry about that. So the title of my presentation that is focused on the issue of environmental alliances is integrally connected with the issue of water and the protection of water as an essential element in the struggle over native rights, lands, and resources. The picture you see in the main screen is a demonstration around the proposed Crandon mine, which was the zinc copper mine that was proposed by Exxon Minerals Corporation in the 1970s, a mile upstream from the Sikagan Ojibwe Reservation, and they're about a mile upstream from their wild rice lake. The woman in the middle, in the purple, holding the water staff, is Fran Van Zyl, who was one of the original water keepers of the Ojibwe Nation, protecting the wild rice and the sovereignty of the Mole Lake Chippewa, or Ojibwe. The person next to her in the tall hat is a member of the Potawatomi tribe, which was the adjacent native population that would be also directly affected by the proposed Exxon underground zinc copper mine. Next slide. In order to understand the significance of the struggles of the native nations of Wisconsin on protecting their lands, water, and resources, I think it's important to put this into context of the period where many mining companies had been essentially confronted with their resource colonial policies in the third world, particularly in Latin America, and decided that they were going to make up some of their lost resource colonies in the third world by recolonizing native populations in the advanced industrial countries, particularly in North America. And so the text here is the mining industry is extending the resource frontier into remote areas where there are untapped reserves of minerals. Indigenous territories and communities are at the leading edge of the extractive resource industry. In the 1970s, the mining industry had participated in the overthrow of a democratically elected government in Chile, which had nationalized its copper resources. And some of the companies that were involved in the overthrow of the Allende government in Chile, namely Kennecott and Anaconda, decided to shift some of their resources back to the United States. And that was the basis for the development of the proposed Ladysmith mine in northern Wisconsin in the early 1970s, and the Exxon mine next to the Mole Lake Reservation. The key dynamic in understanding the conflict between native populations and resource industries is that native nations account for 10 to 15% of the world's population, but have traditional claims to 25 to 30% of the Earth's surface and resources. This, according to Jason Clay, is one of the major reasons for conflict between nations and states. Next. Contrary to conventional wisdom, the racial ethnic confrontation during the Ojibwe spearfishing conflict, which took place in the early 1980s and the early 1990s, was transformed into an environmental cooperation effort where non-Indian towns came to see native sovereignty and treaty rights as an effective legal tool to protect their communities and a common watershed against mining companies. And so the headline from the Wisconsin State Journal summed up a lot of the dramatic development that took place during the treaty controversy, where white sport fishermen were at odds with native populations over their recently affirmed treaty rights to hunt, fish, and gather on the ceded lands, that is the land sold by the Ojibwe Nation to the federal government in treaties made in the 1800s. From the 1800s until the 1970s, these rights were systematically ignored and suppressed by the state of Wisconsin until members of the Lakota Band challenged the authority of the state of Wisconsin to restrict tribal access to the resources guaranteed by the treaties. And that was the beginning of the Chippewa Treaty controversy, which eventually focused on spearfishing as one of the flashpoints in this controversy. And so when the headline says, "Old foes, now allies," what they're talking about is the progress in communicating the reality of Ojibwe treaty rights to the non-native population, and pointing out that the real threat to the resource was not overharvest of the fishing resource by the Mole Lake or the other Chippewa tribes, but rather the pollution threat posed by mining companies that would discharge toxic pollutants into the waterways of northern Wisconsin, destroying the fishery and the economy of tourism for both native and non-native communities. So on the right side of the screen, you have the poster that was promoted by the Midwest Treaty Network and the Wolf Watershed Educational Project, which brought together five Indian tribes, environmental groups, and sport fishing groups to oppose Exxon's metallic sulfide mine at the headwaters of the Wolf River. Next. The Crandon mine conflict extended over 28 years, from 1976 to 2003. A major turning point in that battle occurred in 1995, when the Mole Lake Ojibwe won the right to regulate water quality on their reservation. The tribes had been left out of the Clean Water Act of the 1970s, and so revisions to the Clean Water Act were made in the 1980s, which allowed for sovereign nations to assert their treaty rights to protect their water resources on their reservations from pollution sources such as Exxon's proposed mine just upstream from the tribe's Wild Rice Lake. And so the headline on the left was the culmination of 10 years of legal battles between the state of Wisconsin and the Chippewa or Ojibwa at Mole Lake over the right of the Mole Lake tribe to advance its own water quality standards, which protected the wild rice on the reservation and effectively created a major obstacle to any pollution that any mining company would try to discharge that would affect the Chippewa's Wild Rice Lake. And the reason why this took 10 years is because as soon as the Environmental Protection Agency upheld the right of the Chippewa Ojibwe to regulate water quality on the reservation, the state of Wisconsin immediately challenged the Environmental Protection Agency, saying that they do not have the right to recognize the sovereignty of the Mole Lake tribe to regulate their own water quality. Eventually, federal courts rejected that claim of the state, and the Chippewa were able to assert their right to protect the water on the reservation. And that was a major turning point in the battle to preserve the Chippewa's Wild Rice Lake from destructive mining. Next. So the 1998 interethnic alliance between the tribes, the environmental community, and the sport fishing community successfully lobbied for passage of the Mining Moratorium or Prove It First law that prohibited the state from approving a mine until the mining company could provide an example of a non-polluting sulfide mine. This was a major landmark piece of legislation, which essentially held the mining industry accountable for its own false claims that they could mine safely in a sulfide ore body. And what the Mining Moratorium Law or the Prove It First law said is that if you can actually show us where you have mined successfully in a sulfide ore body in the United States or Canada, you can get a permit. But if you can't show us a single example where you have done that, you are not eligible for a mining permit. And that was passed against the overwhelming opposition of the Republican legislature, of the mining industry, and of course of Exxon and the other mining companies in Wisconsin. The person holding the microphone in the picture is Fred Ackley, who was one of the leaders of the Mole Lake opposition, a tribal judge in the Mole Lake Tribal Court, and one of the mainstays of the water alliance between the tribes and the local communities. The achievement of the 1998 Mining Moratorium Law was seen as a major setback for the international mining industry. And so I've quoted from the journal, Mining Environmental Management Journal in 2000, which portrayed the political movement in Wisconsin that was responsible for this landmark environmental legislation, quote, as an example of what is becoming a very real threat to the global mining industry. Thus, the understanding that the Crandon mine had reverberations well beyond the state of Wisconsin. It indicated to the international mining industry that what happened in Crandon was a harbinger of problems that would plague the mining industry in the decades after the achievement of the 1998 mining moratorium. That is when anti-mining activism became recognized by the industry as a global social movement. Next. And so the end of the Crandon mine battle came on October 28th, 2003, when the Mole Lake Ojibwe and the Forest County Potawatomi purchased the 5,000-acre Crandon mine property, ending a 28-year battle to protect the headwaters of the Wolf River from sulfide mining. Not only did the tribes and the alliance of the tribes with the environmental and sport fishing community throw the mining companies out of the picture, but they purchased the mineral rights to the mine site and declared that the mine site was now a cultural resource area which would be forever off limits to any mining operation. And so unlike other mining battles around the world, where local coalitions achieve a temporary victory by evicting a mining company, this was a situation where they not only evicted Exxon and other mining companies, but they also permanently secured the right to protect that land and those waters from any future development. This was an unprecedented kind of victory that showed the effectiveness and the power of an Indian environmental alliance. Next. So 10 years after the victory at Mole Lake and the Potawatomi tribe, you had another major project being proposed next to an Ojibwa reservation. This time it was a major iron ore mine, which would have been the largest open pit iron ore mine in the world, proposed at the headwaters of the Bad River watershed upstream from the Bad River Ojibwa Reservation on the shores of Lake Superior, and where the Ojibwe had a very rich acreage of wild rice on the shores of Lake Superior. And so the Bad River Ojibwa learned from Mole Lake's experience, and in October 2011, they won the right to set their own water quality standards to protect their water entering the tribe's wild rice beds. And the statement from Chairman Mike Wiggins from the Bad River Ojibwe extended an invitation to the surrounding communities to share in the sovereign protective rights of the Bad River Ojibwe from just north of the Pinocchio Mountain area where the proposed iron mine was proposed to Lake Superior. Our tribe is ready to stand up and protect Nibi water for all peoples and future generations. In other words, the alliance between the Ojibwe and surrounding communities, the environmental community, the sport fishing community, was extended in the case of the opposition to the Pinocchio Hills iron ore mine, in the same way that the Mole Lake tribe established that kind of alliance against the Exxon Crandon mine. Next. In February 2015, 2 years after Governor Walker signed a controversial iron mining law designed to speed up mine permitting, Gedicks, which was the company proposing the open pit mine, pulled the plug on the mine because the project was not feasible, citing unexpected, quote, unexpected wetlands at the mine site. And what you see in the picture, iron mine ecocide, protect the earth, under the treaties, united with Bad River. That is the demonstration put on by the Overpass Light Brigade in Milwaukee, which was a major contributor to the public awareness of the stakes involved with the iron mine next to the Bad River Ojibwa Reservation. Next slide. Of course, the Gedicks notion that the wetlands were unexpected is total nonsense. Activists, poets, musicians, and members of the entire community spoke out, reading poems at meetings, vigils, and other gatherings. Poet Rob Ganson said, "We saw the entire county board go from being in favor of the mine to being against it." And Rob's poem is on the left side of the screen. "I'm loading my pen with invective again, screaming the truth to power, protecting the hills they want to devour with explosives and vast machines that scour the earth for iron and gold." On the right side of the screen, you have a Rob's picture of an armed guard from Bulletproof Security that was hired by the Gedicks Mining Company to, quote, protect the mine site from members of the public who are exercising their right to walk and observe nature and enjoy nature on public lands that were being cordoned off by Gedicks Mining Company with the use of a private military guard that was reminiscent of the kind of armed resistance to mining projects against popular opposition movements that is more likely seen in Central and South America than in northern Wisconsin. This was the first time that a mining company had employed a private security firm to intimidate the local opposition. It was not to protect the mine site, it was to intimidate a growing environmental, sport fishing, and tribal alliance against the mining company. Next. With the support of the Lakota Ojibwe tribe, Paul Demain established the Harvest and Education Camp on public forest land in the Pinocchio Hills as a gesture of solidarity with the Bad River Ojibwe tribe. The camp is within the ceded territory where the Ojibwe have treaty rights to hunt, fish, and gather. And what you see in the slide is a support event in Madison, Wisconsin, raising funds to support the activities of the LCO Harvest and Education Camp, which you see illustrated in the bottom of the picture. This was a demonstration of the resources that would be affected if there were a mining project on the ceded territory of the Lake Superior Ojibwe tribes. During the time of the Lakota Harvest Camp, thousands of people came to the Harvest Camp and were given tours of the proposed mine site and the rich resources, the water resources, the plant and animal resources that would have been affected if there were an open pit iron mine next to the Bad River Reservation. Next. So while laws defining Indigenous rights vary by country, free, prior, and informed consent is evolving as the international norm governing development projects in Indigenous communities. So what was going on in Wisconsin, as well as in other parts of the world where Native populations were being assaulted by mining companies, there was a growing awareness, organization, and education about the impact of these projects, not only on Native peoples, but on the global biodiverse environment that would have been affected by massive pollution generated by these large-scale mining projects. And thus, in 2007, the United Nations passed the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which affirmed the right of free, prior, informed consent before any mining projects took place on Indian reservations or Native populations. Next. Free, prior, and informed consent has revitalized Indigenous efforts to assert self-determination and resist unwanted mining projects in places like Guatemala, where there have been 65 consultations or plebiscites which have held popular opinion about mining projects on Indigenous land. More than 1 million people have expressed their opposition, mostly out of concern over water, pollution, and its devastating impact on agriculture. Despite arguing that the votes are not legally binding, the government was forced to suspend new metal mining licenses for 2 years to stop massive Indigenous protests. Next slide. The mining industry realizes that controversial projects can be stopped dead by local people and communities, threatening shareholder value and destroying executives' careers. This is the whole notion of a social license to operate. It is a term that was coined by the mining industry to indicate the danger of an organized, educated opposition movement. It involves a local community's acceptance or approval of a company's presence and activities. It is intangible, it is unwritten, and cannot be granted by any regulatory agency or any other state agency or legal authority. And therefore, when people organize and show massive local opposition to projects, this raises the financial risks of any mining company that chooses to continue investing in these projects. Next. Ernst & Young, which is a mining consulting organization, assessing the key risks facing the mining industry in 2020 suggested that a social license to operate was the most significant challenge mining companies face. If you look at the chart, the number one threat to new mining projects is not lack of investment or lack of technology or lack of innovation and technology. It is a license to operate, which indicates the power of social opposition to oppose unwanted mining projects. Next. The Menominee Nation water protectors have joined with local citizens, environmental and sport fishing groups in both Michigan and Wisconsin in persuading towns, counties, and tribes to pass resolutions opposing the Back 40 metallic sulfide mine. In 2017, the Menominee County, Michigan Board of Commissioners, which is the site of the proposed mine, voted 5-4 to oppose the project. And so in the very community, which is the headquarters of the proposed mine, the organized opposition convinced the county board to vote against the project that was seen up until then as a valuable economic asset to the community. Next. In recent years, there's been a significant increase in the number of production stoppages and confrontations at mines relating to the issue of social license to operate. This picture is an opposition to a gas field where hydrofracking is being proposed, which threatens the water supply of the local community. And the community has expressed widespread opposition and said that this project has no social license. Next. In March 2017, El Salvador became the first country in the world to impose a nationwide ban on metal mining. Legislators overwhelmingly voted in favor of the ban, claiming that the country's dwindling clean water supply could not sustain metal mining operations. Next. Just to give you some idea of the importance of these international victories, whether it be in El Salvador or among native nations around the world, these examples of communities rejecting destructive mining projects have resulted in concrete legislation, such as in May 2017, when the Maine Senate and House passed a bill that bans larger open pit mines, prohibits underwater storage of mine waste, and requires companies to set aside money to clean up their contamination. Senator Everett Carson of the state of Maine said the bill would ban the most polluting form of mining in our country and the kinds of wastewater impoundments that have failed and led to environmental disasters like the recent tailings dam disaster in Brazil and like the Callahan mine in Brooksville, which is now a federal Superfund site. Next. Where there was well-organized, and this is a quote from, again, a business journal, Business for Social Responsibility, where there was well-organized, significant opposition to a mining project, no matter what the prevailing laws, politicians were reluctant to go against it. In fact, global companies are under greater pressure to respond to broader social expectations today, regardless of the prevailing legal structure, than in any other time in history. And what you have on the left side of the screen is the first major on-site demonstration against the proposed Back 40 mine led by the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin and local citizens groups. Speaking at the microphone is Tribal Chairman Doug Cox of the Menominee Indian Tribe, expressing the united opposition of the tribe and local communities to the proposed Back 40 mine next to the Menominee River and 150 feet, in fact, from the Menominee River, where 70 tons of toxic mine waste would be located as a result of an open pit and an underground mining operation. On the right side of the screen, you have 8 counties which have passed resolutions against the mine, which indicate all along the Menominee River, from the headwaters of the Menominee River in Michigan to the discharge point of the Menominee River around Green Bay and Lake Michigan. All of those counties have passed unanimous resolutions against the mine. In addition, you have 23 Indian tribes in Wisconsin and Michigan that have opposed the mine, 6 intertribal organizations, and 12 environmental, sport fishing, and faith organizations. Next. In January 2020, the Menominee Nation declared the Menominee River has inherent and legal rights, including the right to naturally exist, flourish, regenerate, and evolve, and the right to abundant, pure, clean, unpolluted water. This is known as a Rights of Nature Declaration. It is the recognition that our ecosystems have rights just as human beings have rights. Rather than treating nature as property under the law, rights of nature acknowledge that nature in all its forms has the right to exist, persist, maintain, and regenerate its vital life cycles. For indigenous cultures, this is simply what is so and consistent with their traditions of living in harmony with nature. This is one of many rights of nature initiatives that have been put forward by nations like Ecuador and Bolivia, like the Maori in Australia, and other local communities that have passed rights of nature resolutions to protect rivers and other resources from destructive mining and extractive resource projects. Next. And so summarizing what we've been talking about throughout this presentation, indigenous struggles to defend their lands, cultures, and resources have redefined the balance of power between the extractive resource industry and affected resource communities. Number one, indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making and to give or withhold their consent to activities affecting their lands, resources, and territories, or their rights in general. Consent must be freely given, obtained prior to implementation of activities, and be founded upon an understanding of the full range of issues affected by the activity or decision in question, hence the formulation of free, prior, and informed consent. The legal government awarded right to mine is no longer sufficient. A mining company must have the approval, the broad acceptance of society to conduct its activities. It is a license which cannot be provided by civil authorities, by political structures, or even the legal system. In the first of its kind lawsuit from a tribal nation in the United States, the White Earth Band of Ojibwe is pursuing a rights of nature claim in tribal court to oppose a state approval of Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline replacement. Minnesota has appealed the law in federal court, but this raises the fundamental issue of how the treaty rights of sovereign nations of the Ojibwe, Lake Superior Ojibwe, have rights that allow them to claim the protection of their resources that were guaranteed by the treaties they negotiated with the federal government in the 1800s. Next. From Chief Oshkosh, Aldo Leopold, Senator Gaylord Nelson, and Walt Brissett. Walt Brissett, by the way, was a Red Cliff Ojibwa treaty activist that was one of the leaders of the treaty rights in defense of the spearfishing rights of the Lake Superior Ojibwe in the 1980s and 1990s. Those people and in present day grassroots activists are all examples of how effective environmental defense can be in protecting the resources of both native and non-native communities. And the quote you see is from anthropologist Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Next. That's it.
Thank you, Al. I noticed that there was a lot popping up in the chat and I didn't have access to the chat while I was screen sharing. So I'm going to turn it over to folks who were able to track the chat, like David and Karen, to share any questions that came up there.
Well, starting from the end, there's a question about the connection between mining projects in Wisconsin and the overthrow of the Allende government in Chile. Can you elaborate on this?
Right. In 1970, the Allende Democratic Socialist government was elected to the presidency, and one of the first acts as a sovereign government was to nationalize the copper mining industry, which was the main resource industry in Chile, which had been taken over by American and British mining companies going back to the early 20th century. It was a major generator of revenue for the companies, but did not improve the lives of the Chilean people. And so the government nationalized the copper industry and redirected the resources from out of state or out of country profiteers to develop the internal economy of the Chilean economy, at the same time as they were willing to compensate Anaconda and Kennecott for the properties that they claimed they would lose if the properties were nationalized. And despite the fact that they had offered compensation, and Kennecott and Anaconda conspired with the Nixon-Kissinger administration and the Central Intelligence Agency and the Chilean military to overthrow the Allende government in a bloody coup in 1973, which resulted in several thousand people being slaughtered and hundreds of thousands of people being placed in detention camps where they were subjected to torture and other human rights abuses by a military junta that was supported by international mining companies like Exxon, which immediately which immediately supported the military government of Chile and overturned the progressive legislation that had been put forward by the Allende government. And it was this kind of world historic reversal of economic and democratic activity in Latin America, which resulted in Kennecott redirecting its investment from its investment in Chile copper to an investment in copper mines in northern Wisconsin, particularly in Rush County, and also in other parts of the Midwest.
Great, thank you very much. There's a couple of comments and questions in the chat that I wanted to note for people who aren't monitoring it. There was a question about whether or not the slides would be available, and we are recording it, and we will send out a link to that recording. It'll take us a few days to get it up, but the recording will be available. The other thing to mention is that folks are putting some important links into the chat window. And if you click on those now and open them in your browser, they'll be available to you after the meeting. I'm not sure if those links will be available once the recording is released. I think the Sierra Club puts those recordings up on YouTube. And then there's a question, Al, an update on where things are at the Back 40 mine proposal. And it mentioned there might be some other activists on the program here that would comment as well. But to you.
Right. The present status of the Back 40 project is that it is on hold because the Menominee Nation, along with the coalition to save the Menominee River, have effectively challenged the permits that had been issued, but were overturned by a administrative law court because the permits were fraudulently obtained by the company. And once those permits were overturned, there was no further financial resources available to the company to continue the process. And so they sold the project to another company called Gold Resource Corporation of Denver, Colorado. And that company has not yet reinitiated the permit process. But what the long and short of it is that over the course of 18 years, going back to the time when there was a group called the Front 40 group that were opposing the Back 40 project, the continued opposition of the project and the legal challenges to the permits that had been granted illegally were able to essentially bring the project to a standstill, requiring that any mining company that wanted to pursue the project would have to start the entire permit process from the very beginning, with all the public hearings and all the legal challenges that would inevitably occur if any mining company took over the project. I'd like to invite Dale Burry, I think, who was on the line from the coalition, to add anything about what is going on right now with the project.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm coming across audio.
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Loud and clear, wonderful. My name is Dale Burry, and I serve the Coalition to Save the Menominee River Incorporated. Currently, we are awaiting the 5 mining permit applications from Gold Resources. In their own statement, they had mentioned that it's probably going to be 3 to 4 years before they obtain any of the permits. And our staff of attorneys are standing ready and waiting with any additional challenges that may come forth. Something that we have been working on, the area of the proposed mine has been offered to the state of Wisconsin and the state of Michigan for a designation of a historical preservation description. So, and the meeting for Michigan is coming up January 28th, and I encourage any of you. What we'd like to do is definitely offer a letter of support to the State of Michigan Historical Preservation Office. And I would put it in the chat, but for some reason, my enter doesn't bounce it up into the chat. But it's an easy email. The state officer is Walsh, W-A-L-S-H-T. That's for Todd. So it's W-A-L-S-H-T at michigan.gov. And just if you would express your support for encouraging the state of Michigan to honor the Menominee Indian tribe for this designation. The delineation of this area is on both sides of the river. It's on the Michigan side and the Wisconsin side. Wisconsin has already done their work, and it has been approved as a state historical preservation site. So now we would like to get Michigan to honor the Menominee tribe as well. And then also we're asking the state of Michigan to nominate this is called 60 Islands location. And it's actually called Dog's Belly 60 Islands location. Nominate that to the National Historical Preservation Registry. And we'd certainly love to get that area on the registry for in honor of the Menominee tribe. That was their origination of their entire civilization. Archaeologists have gone back and certainly have discovered bones that were 12,000 years old. So they have been here a long time. And of course, the namesake of the Menominee River, the namesake of the city of Menominee, and the namesake of the Menominee County, Michigan. So if any of you would feel so inclined, we would certainly appreciate your help. Walsh, WALSHT @michigan.gov. Thank you so much.
Dale,
Yes,
on your website, do people have the opportunity to click on a take action button for that?
they do not.
Okay,
They do not. We've been actually, we've got it on our social media sites. We've got it on our call to action button on our website. And I tried to get that in the chat, our website, but my computer just won't let me get it in there. If you go to jointherivercoalition.org, jointherivercoalition.org, you will also see a call to action button. And if you strike that button, a form will come up. You simply enter your name, address, email, your personal comments, and there's also a prepared text body that and you simply hit submit. And that letter will go to Gold Resources and also to H.C. Wainwright, which is investment bank in New York that has been commissioned by Gold Resources to collect monies for the proposed Back 40 mine. So if we can put clouds of doubt in the investment banker world, maybe that'll help us stifle this entire movement. So anything you can help us with, we're greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. We've been popping those email addresses and links in the chat for you, so people should have access to that. Thank you for sharing that. We've got a few more questions in the chat for Al, and we've got about just around 10 minutes for questions before we turn it over to Bill for some final remarks. So Al, next question to you is, do you see a native/non-native alliance coming together to oppose Enbridge's Line 5 oil pipeline reroute around the Bad River Reservation?
Yes, certainly. There's already a Line 5 coalition of led by the Bad River Ojibwa tribe, along with the non-native pipeline opponents that are now reviewing the environmental impact statement for the Enbridge Line 5, and particularly the threat to the water resources in the ceded territory of the Bad River tribe. And also, of course, the exacerbation of the climate emergency and the encouragement of a fossil fuel industry, which can only result in further degradation of the global environment.
All right, and then our next question is the rights of nature movement gaining support in other fights and against overall ecocide?
Yes, the government of Ecuador has it in their constitution that rights of nature as a constitutionally protected right that provides a legal mechanism for communities that are challenging unwanted mining projects that would conflict with the rights of nature, particularly the rights of sensitive ecosystems. The recently elected government of Chile, which has installed a social democratic administration, is also considering incorporating rights of nature into the new Chilean constitution. The Chilean constitution is now being reconsidered because it is a legacy from the military dictatorship that lasted in Chile from 1973 and for the next 18 years until the 1990s. So there's also a rights of nature movement in non-Indian communities. The city of Toledo has declared the local river as having rights of nature and that has been challenged in the courts. But the important point about rights of nature is that these are assertions of rights which do not now exist, but will exist when other communities begin to understand that the present system, which favors corporate domination of regulatory and permitting agencies, is seen to be undemocratic and antithetical to the preservation of critical ecosystems.
All right, thanks. And then this next question is from someone who had to hop off early. So it's a good thing we'll be sending the recording around. Wondering, is there a speakers bureau available that would be available to educate the public about this issue? I know there is a lot of interest in this subject. Venues for presentations would not be hard to find.
There is a several speakers bureau. The Menominee tribe has already organized a Save the Menominee River speaking tour that had appearances before the pandemic, and about 25 Wisconsin colleges and universities. And also there are several people in the coalition to save the Menominee River, which have done local speaking about the Back 40 opposition movement in local area and on Zoom. So if you contact the coalition at jointherivercoalition.org, or if you contact the Menominee tribe, or you contact Wisconsin Resources Protection Council, of which I'm the executive secretary, any one of those organizations can provide a speaker for any event that can be organized to educate the public, churches, civic organizations, other environmental groups about this proposed project.
All right, terrific. We've got a question about getting updates on the Newman lawsuit, but I think before we do that, I'm going to turn things over to Bill for some remarks. And if we've got time, we'll go back to that question.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Can you hear me? Al, we're so
Yeah, loud and clear.
good. You're the main person to hear this. So year after year, you've been an advocate and advocated for environmental justice and indigenous, a defender of indigenous rights. And you show us how a person can contribute talent and time as a volunteer with like-minded people to serve and protect, especially our water, our universal and essential natural resource. The Great Waters Group, in addition to giving you a membership in the Sierra Club, has made a donation to the Milwaukee Riverkeeper to honor you as an activist and educator for your lifelong work supporting groups and making alliances to defend the common good among people and to protect animals, fish, birds, and plants. Milwaukee Riverkeeper is a science-based advocacy organization working for swimmable, fishable rivers throughout the Milwaukee River Basin. The Milwaukee River Basin is in southeast Wisconsin. Its water is captured in the north in Fond du Lac, Dodge, and Sheboygan counties, and to the south in Ozaukee, Washington, Waukesha, and Milwaukee counties, completing the 7-county basin that drains into Lake Michigan. What's critical here is that citizens volunteer to monitor river water by capturing data in specific locations that create an ongoing record of pollution and also improvements in water quality. Milwaukee Riverkeeper issues a report card that the media reports, reaching a wide public in the region. A principal role of its mission is to advocate and educate make the public aware of the necessity of healthy water for everyone's body and spirit. Milwaukee Riverkeeper will make presentations to any group or go into any classroom when invited. It is with pleasure that we honor you tonight. Thank you for being with us, and especially for your clear, passionate, and stimulating presentation. We value education. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, "Do your bit of good where you are. It is all of our little bits of good put together that can heal the world." Your continued action embodies the wisdom of the Archbishop's conviction, and you give us hope in this fraught and time of multiple threats here in Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Back to you, Jenny.
Great, thanks so much, Bill. And yeah, I just want to echo Bill's thanks. Al, I think we're all very, very appreciative of your time and talent this evening and sharing of your many years of experience. Going back to the chat, I'm just looking for, oh, here we go. Paula asks if Frank Bibeau could update us on the rights of Manoomin lawsuit.
I don't think Frank is in. Frank's an attorney for Honor the Earth and the White Earth Nation. I did put a link to the update for Manoomin versus Minnesota DNR in there. That case is now bogged down in a case labeled Minnesota DNR versus White Earth Tribal Government, where the Minnesota DNR is challenging the right of the White Earth Tribal Court to hear certain information. So that link is in there. If someone needs to get a hold of Frank, we can connect you with him. I don't believe I saw him in here tonight. But thank you for the presentation, Al.
Hey, thanks, Paul. I'm here anyway.
Oh, Frank is. Oh, Frank, there you are. I'm
Yeah.
talking for you, but go ahead. I didn't see you.
That's okay. You're doing a great job. I was listening to all the stories of the decades here of resistance from Al's, recalling and so forth. There's kind of interesting thinking about all those times back then at LCO and places. So, rights of Manoomin, Paul gave you a pretty good update there. On December 16th, we had oral arguments at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. So we will be expecting some kind of a decision about that somewhere in the future. I don't know that there's a timeline or deadline for that. Also on December 21st, we had oral arguments against the DNR where they've challenged the jurisdiction in tribal court, and that was at the White Earth Tribal Court of Appeals. And so we'll be awaiting a decision on that as well. And both of those could take some time, and that's the downside of the way the court system works. But at least at White Earth, we've only had to be plugged into the legal system since August. So we're 5 months in. When I look at when we sued the Corps of Engineers, the DC Circuit in December of 2020, we're still waiting on a decision from an expedited request. So, as I was listening to Al talk about some of these things and reservations given the right to regulate the water quality within the reservations, that's helpful. But as the description talked about, you really have to do the whole thing. You have to regulate on and off reservation. And Mole Lake in particular, all of this stuff has been predecessors to all the work I'm using and building off of. Mole Lake, there was a correspondence between Gliffwick and the Corps of Engineers where they acknowledged that the Chippewa treaty rights are essentially the same on and off reservation, and that there is really no distinction about how you can look at them because animals move, plants move, water moves. And so in reality, we've just been trying to find our way back to control what we can about our quality of our environment. And I've been lucky to work with Rights of Nature. I work with the Center for Democratic Environmental Rights with Tom Lindsay and Mari Magrill. And, most recently, one of my friends just filed a case against the city of Seattle for the 3 hydroelectric power dams they have that stop the salmon from going upstream to his reservation. And so that's online also. And you're going to start seeing our rights of nature cases going forward, because that's what we have to use is defense of our ecosystem that we have a right to. You know, we don't have a whole lot past that to try to bring in non-Indians into court and things. But right now, we're getting examined for that because we're doing it to the DNR. But, you know, the DNR isn't a person really, but you have to name somebody in the litigation. So I'm looking forward to working with Line 5 Coalition. I've been working with Paul Domain. You're lucky to have him helping you out there. And I'm really enjoying what I'm watching. And I'm glad that we have a journalist being awarded some recognition also for the work that he's doing. You know, Paul's been doing that work with his paper for a long time. So it's going to be a long fight, but it's going to be a lot more interesting now. And if Paul didn't tell you or no one has told you, we did a flyover with thermal imaging because of the frac outs and the aquifer breaches that have occurred because of Line 3, doing the wrong kind of horizontal directional drilling through our terrain. Our terrain is like Wisconsin's terrain. It's all glacial terrain. So, you know, we have other scientific data that's going to probably help stop what's going on as well. And then there was a conversation this morning at 11 o'clock with Paul Blackburn talking about really what's going on in the future, and that Enbridge may not have customers in the next decade or two. And so whether or not they even have the feasibility to go forward, a lot of dynamics being investigated. So appreciate your time, appreciate your work. Thank you very much. Miigwech.
Thank you so much. We've got just a couple minutes left, so I think we're going to make this the final question from Rose. What law firms are using the rights of nature in court cases? And Al or Frank or Dale or Paul, anybody who wants to address that one.
It's not a law firm. I'm kind of a lone gun tribal member who represents White Earth and Leech Lake. I would tell you it's the same thing about my buddy Jack Finder out in Washington. He's a Yakima Indian, but he's married to, I believe, a Makah, and he's out there on the Sauk Seattle reservation in northwest Wisconsin. I mean, Washington. We're all just connected. I don't know that you can find a law firm that's quite ready to do what we're doing yet with rights of nature. When it all looks safe, you'll see them come out and take credit.
Al, your microphone's still hot.
Yeah, Al, any final words or comments you want to share?
I appreciate the opportunity to share this perspective. And I'm glad that people from Line 5 and Line 3 are on the line and contributing as well, because the experiences that I have described with Mole Lake and the Bad River tribe are some of the building blocks for these struggles going on now, and the victories that were won 20 and 10 years ago are setting the framework for even greater challenges to the extractive industry, particularly the fossil fuel industry today, with strategies that were not available 10 and 20 years ago. So I think we have a lot to look forward to, and a lot to be thankful for the pioneering work of the water protectors at Mole Lake and at the Bad River Ojibwe Reservation.
Great. So as David mentioned, we will be distributing the recording from this presentation to everyone who signed up. And I think we will also try to capture a bunch of the links from the chat to include with that when we send out the recording, because there's lots of great information that folks have been adding to the chat. And we've got some deadlines upon us, right? Like March 4th, I saw in the chat as a deadline for issuing comments for Line 5. So plenty to take action on. And so we will try to pull those together and send those along with the link to the recording. And Jeanette, I see that you've raised your hand. Do you go ahead?
Yes, I live over the border in Minnesota, and of course, I'm working hard against Line 3 with other environmental and indigenous advocates. But in La Crosse, they allowed us Minnesotans to fight for 100% renewable energy goals in La Crosse. And I was wondering if Minnesotans can weigh in on these comments to the Wisconsin DNR, because it does affect us as well.
I think a lot of what people were putting in the chat earlier was having to do with Michigan weighing in on, to Michigan legislators. So I think anybody can enter comments.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Michigan part of the line. I think there's a Wisconsin effort as well.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep, and Phyllis just echoed what I just said, that, yep, everybody can comment no matter where you are. So, yeah, but that's a good question. Thanks, Jeanette. All right. Any of my colleagues, Bill, David, Karen, do you have any other last remarks to add before we wish everyone a good night?
I'm good. Good night.
Yes.
All right, great.
Good night. Thank you.
Well, again, Al, thank you so much. And
Yes.
I'm not sure if Isiah is still on, but Isiah, if you are still on, thank you for all your work, and thanks.
I
to all-
am.
Oh, great.
All right.
Good
Good.
job,
I am.
Isiah. Good job.
I gotta say also, that was a really awesome presentation, Al, and a great refresher for me just in terms of just the landscape of and history of the struggles of the mining industry and just those different extractive industries in the state and around. So thank you for that.
And I always tell everyone when Al speaks, you'd better listen.
Great program, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Great, thank you.